You found the Live Local Marketing Podcast, where business owners share their knowledge about what's working in the market today. No fluff, just their experiences and stories from people who are making it happen. And if authentic, practical marketing resonates with you, be sure to visit livelocalwarmmarketing.com and learn to grow your business on warm marketing referrals. Now, on to the show. Welcome. Thanks for joining us for the Live Local Marketing Podcast. And today we're with Gary. Sir, how are we feeling today?
I'm doing great. How are you, Billy?
Doing good. It's a little warmer where I'm at than you are, which is saying a lot because it's cold here.
Yeah, it's about 7 degrees here in Michigan today. So
yeah, no, not doing that. All right. So we'll give a little background about Gary and then get right into the questions.
Sure.
He is a marketing, communications, and media expert with diversified experience in marketing research, media relations, publishing, social media, and editorial strategy. He's adept at communicating complex ideas and concepts across a variety of platforms, including digital and social. And I just learned he does pictures. So we'll talk about that a little bit too in his community that he runs. And he also teaches entrepreneurship at the adjunct facility in the community college. So a lot of cool topics and interesting ideas today. Are we ready for the questions, sir?
I am born ready.
Born ready. Let's do this. Talk to us about a time where you had a loss that turned out to be a win.
Well, in what I do, a lot of it's relationships, right? So you know, I mean, and that's basically a lot of businesses. So what you have to figure out is, you know, when you've had a relationship gone sour, right? How to recover that, right? So in my case, for example, it might be a case where I have primarily a lot of my revenue comes from sponsorships in my newsletter, right? So I have people who are sponsors, and then they go, you know, this isn't really working for me. I'm not getting clicks and things. Then I have to kind of explain, you know, it's not a clicky environment. It's like sponsoring a golf tournament. So it's about more relationships than clicks. And so, you know, I've had people who come on board as sponsors, stay for 3 months, and then they drop off, and then you kind of have to maintain that relationship because the industry I'm in, the photo imaging industry, is very small. I mean, it's a big industry, a lot of business, but everyone knows everybody. So, so in those cases, I'll say something like, you know, you probably shouldn't be sponsoring in the first place, but maybe there's something else you could do that will raise your visibility in our community without having to go that route. If you're interested in, you know, feedback, there's other things we can do. So a lot of it is, you know, understanding really what people are missing, what their objectives are, and how you can meet them. And sometimes you can do it, sometimes you can't. I mean, you know, one thing you can't really do is, I've learned in this business, is really just change your business model to suit an unhappy person, because it probably will not, in the end, work to your advantage, because you've made a change and they probably aren't going to stick with you anyway.
How often do you have that opportunity to turn a failed sponsor into like a marketing client? Does it happen?
No, usually it's not, that usually doesn't happen. What will happen is, they may want to come on as for a project or something because they're trying to solve a problem.
Okay.
Right? And that's usually what the consulting work is, usually project based, right? I'm trying to solve this problem.
Makes sense.
So can you work with me for 6 months on this project? So it's usually not ongoing. Ongoing relationships are primarily the newsletter sponsorships and other things.
That makes sense. Got it. All right. So when you sit down, how does setting goals look for you? Do you start at the beginning of the year? Do you do quarterly? What strategies are you using to help set yourself up with goals for the year?
Well, because I look at what I do as managing a community, right? In terms of, you know, trying to bring people together in my industry. So the smartest thing I learned to do, which was realize I'm not the really authority, right? Because I don't run a camera store. I don't run a photo printing place. I'm not actually in the industry. Right. So it's really important for me to find out what other people think, what my key people say. So I put together a very loose advisory board, if you will, where, you know, we have a call, usually quarterly, at least every 6 months, where, hey, these are the things I'm thinking about doing. What do you think? Is there an audience? And the best thing they've done is talk me out of doing things. Right, things I think are good ideas that are like, no, that's not really what people want. And so you got to listen to them, right? So, you know, part of a goal setting process is having good information on which to set the goal, and then be willing to change the goal if it's not going to meet your objectives.
So you have a group and you meet with them quarterly. Did that group form like organically, or did you seek them out? Like, how did that form? Because people want to network. They still have.
So what I do, I just put out a call on my newsletter. Say I'm looking for people to be on my advisory board. And so I made it very public. I was like, you know, and they don't get paid or anything. And I don't have to do what they say, right? It's very much, it's literally all about me, right? It's how can we make my thing better? That is really, but I'm doing this long enough in the industry that I'm in that, you know, people understand that, you know, I'm really here to serve my audience. It's not really about making me personally successful. I'm successful if my audience is successful, if my community is successful, right? If the industry grows, if partnerships are formed or things happen. So it works in this context, right? If I didn't have 30 some years of experience in the industry, or the reputation I have, I couldn't actually do that. Right? If I was just coming in and saying, hey, I'm starting this and I want all you people to give me all your ideas, it probably wouldn't go over as well.
But so if somebody were to do that, they could. It's just going to take some patience.
Well, yeah, they absolutely could. But, you know, and I've looked at like other industries. Is there a way I could like transfer this model? It just, you know, in my world, again, as I mentioned, it's very small. And, you know, in terms of everybody knows each other ish. Yeah. Right. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry with, you know, a few hundred people in it. So that I talk to. So it's really, in a way, you can build that up in other ways, but you know, I think you'd have to be very, very selective. I think the narrower you go, the easier it would be.
Got it. That makes complete sense. All right. So let's talk a little bit. You have a newsletter. Let's talk about some cold marketing that you do that's very effective. And let's talk about some warm marketing that you do that's very effective. Well, a quick break before we get to that next answer, because I know that answer is going to be brilliant, which is why I chose this moment to interrupt. If you love what you're seeing and you want to run your business off of warm marketing referrals, visit our website, livelocalwarmmarketing.com. It's got valuable resources, office hours, memberships, the book, an array of resources to help you get rid of cold calls, cold leads, door knocking, and run a business you can be proud of through referrals and warm marketing. Now, back to the show.
Well, I'm one of those people, I'm very old school, right? In the sense that, you know, I have a very old model. I do some social and some other stuff. So in terms of like cold stuff, you know, I really, when I started the newsletter, it was almost by accident, right? I had a Facebook group that I was updating the industry on, and a person literally said to me, hey, if you turn this into a newsletter, I'd sponsor it. And I'm like, okay, wow. I'll start it in do a newsletter. I'll start a newsletter. And then, but I never really intended it to be quote unquote a business. And then it became one. And then I realized I had to do things that business people have to do. Like in the publishing business, you have to have a media kit with your rates and all those kind of things, sizes, publishing schedule, and all those things. So once I started doing those kind of things, just doing the basics, hey, here's my media kit. Here's my rates. Here's what you get. Here's my schedule. Here's the opportunities. That opened up all kinds of things, right? Because it gave people a reason. So I think that's where a lot of people make mistakes, and is they don't realize that there's a certain basic things you do that you did just you know, the floor level stuff that you have to do that create the other opportunities, right? That begin the conversations that lead to other things.
That's good. And you didn't do it with AI. You went old school and you made it all by hand, right? You did it all yourself.
Before AI, but trust me, I use AI as a tool all the time. It's a great tool, time-saving tool, especially for someone like me where, you know, I am the company, I am the business. So anything that saves me time, you know, in the end will hopefully generate more money. So you know, AI is definitely here to stay, but you know, it's more of a companion than a you know, that sort of thing.
Assistant. So all right. So sounds like most of the stuff you do is warm marketing. You just happen to know any people.
Well, no. Some of the stuff comes cold. I mean, that's the thing. Some of the stuff gets attention, gets passed around. I mean, my open rate on the newsletter is upwards of 40%, so it's well read. It gets passed around. I've got a LinkedIn group, and I literally have had people say, "Hey, I've heard. You know, it's a name that gets attention, right? The Dead Pixel Society. People, for some reason, people really like the name. So it tends to draw people's attention, then they start looking into it. So, you know, I've gotten definitely cold, I don't want to say cold calls, but, you know, cold leads, if you will. But the other thing you have to remember in what I'm doing, because it's a relationship business, it takes me about 2 years to sell a sponsorship, right? I very rarely get anyone come up and say, hey, I really love your newsletter. I want to be a gold sponsor for, you know, whatever it is a month. It usually takes a couple years where I start the conversation and then it goes through kind of their budget cycle and it gets then it gets turned down. Then they put it back in the budget cycle and then it gets approved and then people stay. So, so you're just understanding kind of the buying cycle of things. I think a lot of people want to push a decision quicker than it really than is natural. Again, some things are much faster, some transactional, right? I mean, we mentioned earlier, you've had a real estate background, you know how that works. But what I'm doing in relationship business, they really need to know me in the audience before they want to come aboard and be visible.
Yeah, it sounds like you do an excellent job of taking them from cold and moving them to lukewarm and into warm, and then slowly building that trust back up.
It's been a learning process for me because I'm a terrible salesperson. So
those are the best salespeople. The terrible ones, like you work it out, you create long-term relationships. Let's talk a little bit about a strategy, if you have any, that you don't use anymore. You're like, this is dumb. I use the newsletter. I move people in the warm. What don't you do anymore?
Yes, not doing things is really important. Like that's one of the things, like I said, my advisory board, right? There were certain things where I was going down a path where I felt like I had to do a lot of social, right? And I meant, and I got an Instagram, I've got all that stuff, but I really found out that it really wasn't benefiting me because I was doing all this other stuff. Like I wasn't a primarily social challenge. I got an Instagram account and this stuff, and that's fine. But no, I really de-emphasize that as sort of, it's like it's the 10th thing I do on my top 5 things to do in terms of creating specific posts specifically for things. Now I do have like some automated things on my blog and the website and things that, as soon as a post goes, it goes out to the various places. Yeah. But I don't really do things that are like, I'm going to create a specific post about an Instagram post or whatever about this. Now, again, and then mostly because it's time, right? I mean, I know there's AI things that'll do that, but other than LinkedIn, and maybe a little bit of Facebook, I'm not going to waste time on TikTok. No one's looking for me on TikTok. Instagram to some extent, so you just got to be selective. And I think in those kind of things is just, you can't be everywhere. And again, on the marketing side of my business, that's when I talk to clients. That's when I advise them on social and things. That's one thing I tell them is, pick 2. I don't care which 2 social medias, but just pick 2. Which one are where your audience is, and you can be everywhere, but it's a waste of time. So
nice. Yeah, that's true. So let's talk about the branding side of it. So you obviously have a very specific brand, and you're bringing in very specific sponsors, and you're talking to a very specific audience. How do you, when you speak to sponsors, how do you pull the brand out of them? How do you know that they're the right fit for you?
Well, usually because they understand who the audience is, right? So I've had people, like, for example, my audience are a lot like yours in the sense where they're small business owners, or, some of them are fairly large companies, right? Like Shutterfly and Snapfish, and those people, they're all my audience too. But I also have, the corner Photoshop that's got 10 employees up to a bigger lab that's got 40 or 50 employees. So, it varies, right? And so if they understand who that audience is, that's who they're talking to, then they're a fit. What I really avoid are people who, because I get pitched all the time for, hey, will you cover my app that will put a pig's nose on someone's face? And I will say no, because my audience doesn't care about that. Yes, it's in the industry, it's imaging, but they're not going to either use it in their business, or it's not something their customers are going to be interested in. So that's the sort of thing. So I'm in the photography industry, if you will, but we're not a photography podcast, if you will, or community, right? I'm not doing tips, tricks on how to take a picture or compose a picture or print a picture or anything like that. It's more like, how do you run your business in this rapidly changing market?
So when you talk to them about that, so there's got to be a huge variety of people taking certain kinds of pictures, right? They probably theme them, right? So this kind of photographer, this kind of photographer. So how do they know who their audience is? It can't just be somebody who likes birds. Like, that's too simple. There's more to it than that, right?
Well, yeah. Well, again, most of the people in my audience, we tend to focus on what we call the memories or family heritage market. These are people who want to relive things somehow. And that could be in a bunch of different ways, right? It could even be, where you've got a closet full of pictures that you
Okay.
want to digitize and relive. So that's a big audience for me. It's also people who are doing what they call volume photography, which is, you're going, what is that? But that's school pictures, right? It's your kids,
Oh,
the pictures
okay.
that your kids,
Yep.
and also it's sports and events, because those people are taking pictures at youth sports and cheer camps and all those kind of wonderful things. And so it's really about kind of reliving those, memories of sort of, a lot of those people, very, very, very specific, right? They're very, very, the volume photography people hang out with the volume photography people, and the wedding photography people hang out with the wedding. So what I try and do
Wow.
with my newsletter is kind of touch on every single one of those people who are in the business. I call it the business of serving photographers. That's really what it is. And
Makes
so
sense.
I'm trying to cross pollinate. So where people see things, hey, this guy's doing this thing for this, for his youth sports. I don't do a lot of that, but I could see where I could apply some of that to my business. So a lot of it's when I'm trying to cross pollinate
Crossover
of people who are in the business of serving photographers. That's kind of in general how I do that. So again, a lot of it is what I'm doing is sifting out, like getting rid of people, not getting rid of people, but
niching down,
condensing, right?
Yeah.
Using my many decades of doing this, knowing what's relevant, what's not, and condensing it down to just what people want.
You're in a very unique industry that you're just specific enough that you have just a big enough audience. You can still reach all the different people. That's a very specific and very fascinating niche. And I hope everybody listening can find their photography niche. That'd be pretty amazing.
Well, I mean, if you look about it, almost every industry, because I talk about this in my class, is, almost every industry, whatever, has this sort of thing. It's just a matter of, you got to resist the temptation of wanting to be everything, right? Knowing your market and knowing, and doing the research that it's big enough, right? Now, because like, for example, if you're into golf, right? Let's say you want to serve the golf pros, right? And you want to start up a golf community for golf pros. And well, that will also include people who are doing simulators, also include people who fit clubs, also include the people who do shoes, also include the people who do gadgets and whatever. And, you realize, golf pros, that's not, how many of those are there? But then you realize, wow, they use a lot of things and it's a very competitive market. In fact, I'll probably start that right after this podcast.
We just created a business on the fly. That's great.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my goodness. That's amazing. All right. So talk to us about the best marketing advice you've ever been given.
Well, again, it goes back to a lot of times you can chase your tail in a lot of things. Again, if you're a very small business like me, or if you're a very targeted business, every single business failure we've seen in the last few years of major companies, whether it's like, Nike with what they're going through, or what Country Buffet went to recently, was we are desperate to reach new people. So we're willing to walk away from our existing market to reach new people, right? Because we think the grass is greener on the other side. These Gen Zs are weirdos, and we need to figure out how to reach them. And they don't behave like other people. So we got to change how we do things. We got to jazz it up and be, well, here's the reality. People don't change a whole lot. People are people. Yeah, there's some societal things that happen and some obviously changes that happen culturally that you got to be aware of, but most people want the same things. Yeah. And so, because that's always the thing that, like in our industry, there's always, oh my gosh, the Gen Zs, they don't print. Well, guess what? Actually, they print a lot. They just don't print the way they used to print with film and pay. Actually, a lot of those people are shooting film now. And, but they also have instant cameras that are very, very popular. Fuji makes this instant camera, and it's a huge thing. Go to Best Buy, there's a huge display of them there, and Target has them. And believe me, they wouldn't be getting that shelf space if that wasn't popular. So you have to kind of get rid of this bias that, well, they won't print. Yes, they will. They're just going to print differently. And what you have to figure out is, what kinds of things will they print on and offer those things? And that's where I think people tend to, make mistakes, is they tend to change the new thing without realizing, what, maybe I should focus on my core competency and work to expand through that.
Yeah. Just ask Sears and Blockbuster.
Well, exactly.
Yeah, just see how they think about that. Let's move into the confidence. So if you're meeting up with somebody, and this niching idea sounds awesome. So niching it down, hitting a specific audience. What do you talk to the people about? Or like that, I won't make enough sales if I do that. I won't make enough because my net isn't big enough. How do you have that discussion with them?
Well, that is tough, right? Because it is very hard to size markets. It's a lot harder than it used to be, even with all the information on the internet. There's just most the research you see on the internet that is like this market's growing by this much, and they're all nonsense and crap.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I mean, it is a very difficult thing, right? So you have to do two things, right? You got to trust your gut, right? And you also have to have enough experience or insight, or know who to ask the questions to be able to grow that market. Because when I started my newsletter, I thought for sure my total audience was 500 people. That was literally what I thought. And I made up my pricing for the sponsorships literally on the spot. I just said, okay, it's going to be this much. And there was no marketing research involved. And I'm almost, because it wasn't supposed to be a business, right? It was really supposed to be a promotional tool for my consulting business. Now it's turned into the bulk of my income, because now we do in-person events now, and we've got a podcast, and we do the newsletter and all this other stuff. And so I would not have probably gone down the path if I didn't think there was more growth potential. But instinctively, I set my sights fairly reasonable. And again, my audience is not huge. It's about 1,500 people on the, well, if I count the Substack, it's almost over, it's 2,500. But it's and you think, well, that's not a huge market, but I can go through the list and I see who's opening it up. And I've got 10 people that I look for that are pretty much the top people in the industry. And if they're opening it up, I know I'm doing a good job. If they're not opening it up, I got to change things up. There's something wrong in the content. So, a lot of it is, and going back to your question on confidence is, I was okay with failing because I wasn't supposed to be a business in the first place.
Wow, that is pretty neat.
So that was kind of how that can happen was, and so, you always hear when you read the high tech stuff or the tech industry stuff, oh, be okay with failure, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, yeah, but you can't like plan for failure, right? And make that part of your plan, right? You've got to be okay with it.
You gotta have kind of a safety net. It always drives me nuts. They burn the bridges people, or burn the boats. The burn the boats people. Like, it's fine, but I can also like motivate myself and still have a full-time business.
Right,
that
you
pays
still
the
got to
bills.
eat, right? I mean,
yeah.
That's the reality. Is not everyone. I mean, most small businesses, struggle and fail, right? Most startups don't do very well. There's a reason why, in the VC community, 1 out of every 10 businesses are successful, because there's a lot of business that get funded that are just either terrible business, terrible management, not a good product, whatever the reason is. So, and I think there's, in that world, there's sort of there's almost a business around the idea of celebrating failure. I'm like, well, I think you can learn from it, but you don't have to make it like your job. So hey, I failed again.
You're supposed to be learning from it. You're not supposed to be emulating it. You're supposed to be learning from it.
Hooray! What I learned from wasting $10 million of VC money.
Nice. All right, I could ask you like 100 more niche questions because I have such good. You found just the perfect audience. It makes it so fascinating to talk more about it.
Well, thank you.
We're gonna have you do the outro about your business, and then how can people get a hold of you, especially if they need some of your services or want to be part of the newsletter or just want to learn more about niching down and finding those perfect audience, which seems like you have the perfect grasp on. So without further ado, right ahead.
Okay, so anyway, my name's Gary Pageau, and I'm the editor, publisher, principal person at the Dead Pixel Society. We are a community for people who serve photographers. We have a weekly newsletter. We have a weekly podcast, and we have in-person events. The next one coming up is March 1st and 2nd in Las Vegas. It's called Photo Imaging Connect. It's a small executive level conference of about hopefully 45, 60 or 60 people. just people getting together, sharing ideas and networking. And the parent company is Info Circle LLC. That's where I wrap up kind of everything, where we have our marketing consulting side, where most of my clients are actually in the industry, right? And but they want a specific project done, or they want support or some way. And yeah, so that's kind of how it started and how it's going, and it's been going really well. Thank you.
That is awesome. All right. So,
And so you want to go to the deadpixelsociety.com and also the deadpixelsocietypodcast.com. Those are my two websites. And then, of course, the event is photoimagingconnect.com.
Awesome. There you go. So if you're into photos and still, that's perfect to check it out. But even so, like the systems you have in place and the other things that a lot can be learned, even if they're in a different industry. So there's either way, I tell you, go check out the podcast, go consume some of the content, make sure you hook up with Gary, because it's got a twofold value add to what you're doing. So I appreciate your time today. And yeah, such great niching questions. That is phenomenal. Thank you for your help.
I appreciate you being here. Thank you.